Hello, and welcome to Budget Commander. On this channel, we'll discuss Magic the Gathering topics with a focus on playing Commander on a budget. We'll cover things like deck building, top cards, deck techs, and more. Let's get started. Hello friends, we got a Commander gameplay for you today. Each of the decks in this game are featuring a Commander from the Throne of Eldraine set and are a budget build. You can check out deck techs to any deck that you're interested in the video description down below. On to starting hands. We have Sir Alan, who holds a hand of 3 planes, Trapped in the Tower, Spectral Grasp, Feat of Resistance, and Kabira Vindicator. The Sir Alan deck is an evasive style deck, so he tries to lock down his opponents or give himself protection from colors so that he can swing freely with Sir Alan, pumping up his team and hopefully getting in for a lot of damage. Then we have Ayara, who keeps 2 swamps, Witch's Cottage, Nihil Spellbomb, Forever Young, Merciless Executioner, and Revenge of Ravens. This is an aristocrat style deck, so she's going to try to sacrifice a bunch of her own creatures, get lots of value off of her creatures dying, and hopefully drain her opponents out. Torbrand, Thane of Redfell, keeps 3 mountains, Glinthorn Buccaneer, Lightning Rig Crew, Sin Prodder, and Obsidian Fireheart. Goal of this deck is to burn out his opponents, deal lots of damage, increase that damage with other cards like Torbrand, where if he deals damage you get to add on to it. And then lastly we have Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig, who keeps 2 forests, a Gingerbread Cabin, Rampant Growth, Elemental Bond, Renegade Crassus, and Sandworm Convergence. This is a +1/+1 counters deck, so Yorvo's trying to get as big as possible, get his other creatures as big as possible, and swing for a lot of damage. Alright, Sir Alan's going to start us off by playing a Plains and passes to Ayara, who plays a Swamp, and then puts out Nihil Spellbomb. Passing to Torbrand, who plays a Mountain, and then passes to Yorvo, who plays a Forest. Sir Alan then plays a Plains. Ayara untaps, plays a Swamp, and passes to Torbrand, who puts a Mountain on the table, and passes to Yorvo, who puts out a Forest and casts Rampant Growth. And then we see Ayara activate Nihil Spellbomb, exiling Yorvo's graveyard and drawing a card. Alan's going to play a Plains, passes to Ayara, who untaps, plays a Swamp, and then Ayara from Ayara. She triggers when she enters, so she's going to gain some life and her opponents are going to lose some life. And then Torbrand's going to play a Mountain and cast the Glinthorn Buccaneer. Glinthorn Buccaneer is going to attack Yorvo and bring his life total down to 37. And then Yorvo untaps, plays a Forest, and plays Elemental Bond. Alan plays Myriad Landscape, passes to Ayara, who puts out a Swamp, and then attacks Yorvo, bringing his life to 35. Second main phase, she'll cast Revenge of Ravens, and then Torbrand untaps, plays a Mountain, and Torbrand from Torbrand. Moves to combat and attacks Yorvo again, dealing damage, also triggering Torbrand, so Yorvo's life total is now 31. Yorvo untaps, plays a Forest, and then for 3 brings out the Renegade Crassus. This triggers Elemental Bond, so Yorvo will draw a card, and then passes to Alan, who activates the Myriad Landscape, bringing in a couple of Plains, then plays the Plains himself, and for 2 casts Trapped in the Tower, targeting the Renegade Crassus. Then we see Ayara untap and play a Swamp, and cast Merciless Executioner. When it enters, Ayara is going to trigger, so her opponents are going to lose some life and she's going to gain some life, and then everybody has to sacrifice a creature, so we'll see a bunch of stuff die. And then second main, she'll cast Forever Young, drawing a card and putting the Merciless Executioner back into her hand. We see a mountain from Torbran, and then he'll cast the Obsidian Fireheart. Yorvo untaps, plays a forest, and then Yorvo enters the battlefield, triggering the Elemental Bond. Sir Alan untaps, plays a Plains, and for 2 casts Spectral Grasp, targeting Lord Yorvo, or Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig. And then casts Sir Alan himself. Ayara untaps and plays a Swamp, and for 3 recasts the Merciless Executioner. Once again, Ayara will trigger, opponents will lose life, she'll gain a life, and then everybody will sacrifice a creature. Then Ayara is going to cycle the Polluted Mire. And Torbran opens up by attacking Yorvo with the Obsidian Fireheart, bringing Yorvo's life total down to 25. And then we see the Sin Prodder enter the battlefield for Torbran. Yorvo is going to untap and play a forest, and then Yorvo will re-enter the battlefield, once again triggering Elemental Bond and drawing a card. Sir Alan untaps, and once again Sir Alan enters the battlefield. Ayara untaps and plays the Witch's Cottage, putting the Merciless Executioner back on top of her library. Torbran untaps, and the Sin Prodder triggers, revealing Cinder Pyromancer off the top of his library. Sir Alan doesn't want Torbran to have it, so he'll take some damage. And then Torbran will move to combat, attacking Ayara, which triggers the Revenge of Ravens. So life totals will change. And then Ayara will take combat damage, bringing her life down to 38. Second main phase, Torbran's going to play the Lightning Rig Crew. And the Spear Spewer passes the turn to Yorvo, who plays a Gingerbread Cabin, gaining a food token. And then for 8, casts Sandworm Convergence. Yorvo goes to combat and attacks Ayara, triggering the Revenge of Ravens. So she'll gain some life, he'll lose a little life, and then she'll take combat damage, bringing her life total down to 35. At the end of turn, Sandworm Convergence will trigger, so a worm will enter the battlefield, and when that happens, Yorvo triggers to gain a +1/+1 counter and draw him a card off of the Elemental Bond. Sir Alan untaps and then plays the Kabira Vindicator, and then levels up the Kabira Vindicator and passes the turn to Ayara, who plays a Swamp, and then recasts the Merciless Executioner. When it enters, once again opponents will lose life, she'll gain some life, and then everybody will sacrifice a creature. Passing to Torbran, he'll untap, Sin Prodder will trigger, revealing Staff of Nin off the top. Once again, Sir Alan does not want Torbran to have it, so he'll take 6 damage. And then we see a mountain from Torbran, and Torbran from Torbran. Moving to combat, Torbran's going to attack Ayara. Revenge of Ravens will trigger. Life totals are going to change, and then she'll take combat damage, bringing her life down to 31. Torbran also triggers, adding some damage to that, so life total is actually 27. Yorvo untaps and then casts the Verdurous Gearhulk. He'll target himself, so he'll enter with 4 +1/+1 counters, which will also trigger Yorvo, as well as the Elemental Bond, drawing a card and adding some +1/+1 counters to Yorvo. Then Yorvo is going to play a Forest for turn, and for 3, cast Colossal Majesty. And for 1, Arbor Elf. This triggers Yorvo again, so he'll get another +1/+1 counter. And then Yorvo is going to combat, attacking Torbran for 8. Torbran decides to take it, reducing his life total to 24. End of turn, Sandworm Convergence triggers, giving him a worm token, which also triggers Yorvo and the Elemental Bond, drawing some cards and getting some +1/+1 counters. Sir Alan untaps and plays Angel of Vitality, and then plays Sunlance, targeting the Arbor Elf, and then casts Feat of Resistance on Sir Alan, choosing to give him protection from red until end of turn. He'll get a +1/+1 counter, and then attack Torbrand for 5, bringing his life total down to 19. Ayara is going to untap at the start of her turn and play a Swamp, and then for 2, cast the Reassembling Skeleton. When it enters, Ayara will trigger, opponents will lose life, she'll gain some, and then she will use her activated ability, sacrificing the Reassembling Skeleton to draw a card, and then recast the Reassembling Skeleton out of her graveyard. When it enters, Ayara is going to trigger again, gaining her some life, and opponents are going to lose some life. And then she'll cast Costly Plunder, sacrificing the Reassembling Skeleton to draw some cards. And then again, recast Reassembling Skeleton from the graveyard, triggering her gain life and opponents lose life ability. Passing the turn, at the end of turn, Lightning Rig from Torbrand is going to activate, dealing a damage to each opponent, but then that damage is going to have an additional 2 to it as Torbrand is on the battlefield, so each opponent is going to lose some life. And then Torbrand will untap and reveal the Fire Servant off the top. Again, Sir Alan does not want Torbrand to have this Fire Servant, so he'll take 5 damage, and then Torbrand's going to add an additional 2 to it, reducing Sir Alan to 14 life. And then Torbrand's going to cast Smash to Smithereens, destroying the Verdurous Gearhulk and dealing some damage to Yorvo. Yorvo's going to have 12 life after it's all said and done, and then moving to combat, Torbrand's going to attack Ayara, which triggers the Revenge of Ravens. Life totals will change, and then combat damage will be dealt, reducing Ayara's life total to 15 after it's all said and done. Second main phase, Torbrand's going to cast the Gutter Snipe, and then pass the turn to Yorvo, who untaps. Colossal Majesty triggers, drawing a card, and then Ordeal of Nylea on Lord Garenbrig. And then moving to combat, Yorvo attacks Torbrand as well as a worm, and Torbrand's going to choose to block with the Lightning Rig crew and the Gutter Snipe. So Yorvo is going to eat both of his creatures. Nylea's Ordeal will trigger, so he'll gain a couple of extra lands. And before combat damage is dealt, the Lightning Rig crew is going to activate to deal damage to each opponent, and then Torbrand is going to add some additional damage to it. Life totals looking pretty low after it's all said and done. And then second main phase, Tranquil Thicket is going to be cycled. And then Yorvo is going to cast Soul of the Harvest, which will trigger Yorvo as well as the Elemental Bond. So he will draw a card and get a +1/+1 counter. And then Sandworm Convergence is going to trigger, giving Yorvo a worm, which also triggers Yorvo and the Elemental Bond, drawing some cards, getting some +1/+1 counters, and passes to Sir Alan, who untaps. He goes immediately to combat, attacking Ayara. This triggers the Revenge of Ravens as well as Sir Alan, so his other creatures will get +1/+1, and opponents will lose. Alan will lose a life, and Ayara is going to gain some life. And then after combat damage, Ayara is going to have 6 life afterwards. Second main phase, going to cast the Citadel Siege, choosing Dragons, and then cast a Gold Mirror. And then for 1, cast the Fairy Guide Mother. Passes the turn to Ayara, who plays a Swamp for turn. And then for 4, casts Blood for Bones, sacrificing the Reassembling Skeleton and returning a Merciless Executioner to the battlefield. When it enters, Ayara will trigger, opponents will lose life and she'll gain life, and then everybody will sacrifice a creature. Next, she'll cast a Giant's Skewer. And then Ayara will attempt to equip that skewer to herself. And moving to combat, the Citadel Siege triggers, tapping down Ayara. Passing the turn to Torbran. Torbran untaps, the Sin Prodder triggers, reveals a mountain, goes to hand. And then going straight to combat, the Citadel Siege triggers, tapping down the Obsidian Fireheart. And the Sin Prodder will attack Ayara, which will trigger the Revenge of Ravens. So life totals will change. And then she'll take some combat damage. Second main phase, Torbran's going to play a Mana Geode, as well as an Electrostatic Field. And a Mountain for turn. With nothing left, passes to Yorvo, who untaps. The Colossal Majesty will trigger, drawing him a card. He'll play a Forest for turn, and then cast Return to Nature, destroying Citadel Siege. And then cast the Sporeback Troll, which triggers Soul of the Harvest, so Yorvo will draw a card, and triggers Yorvo, so he will gain a +1/+1 counter. Then cast Titanic Brawl, targeting Yorvo himself and Electrostatic Field, so they'll fight each other and Yorvo will eat the Electrostatic Field. And then moves to combat. Yorvo is going to attack Torbran, Soul of the Harvest will attack Ayara, and a Worm will attack Sir Alan. No blocks from Torbran or Ayara, however, Alan is going to block the Worm with the Fairy Guide Mother. Revenge of Ravens triggers, so Ayara is going to gain some life, and Yorvo is going to lose a little life, and then after combat, both Torbran and Ayara are knocked out of the game. Second main phase, we move to the end of turn and Sandworm Convergence triggers, giving Yorvo a Worm, which triggers Yorvo and the Elemental Bond, so he'll draw a card and gain a +1/+1 counter. And then Sir Alan untaps, plays a Plains for turn, and cycles the Desert of the True, drawing a card. And then casts Aura Blast, targeting the Sandworm Convergence, destroying it and drawing another card. And then passes the turn. However, on end step, Yorvo wants to activate his food, so he'll sacrifice the food to gain some life, and then untap. Colossal Majesty will trigger, drawing him a card, and then we see Trollbred Guardian hit the battlefield, giving all creatures with +1/+1 counters trample. And then that also triggers Soul of the Harvest, Elemental Bond, and Yorvo. So Yorvo's going to draw 2 cards and get a +1/+1 counter. And then moving to combat, attacks Alan with Yorvo and a couple of worms. However, before blocks are declared, Celestial Flare is going to go off, forcing Yorvo to sacrifice a worm. And then the Gold Mirror blocks the worm, and Sir Alan will block Yorvo. However, since Yorvo has trample, he deals more than enough damage to knock Sir Alan out of the game. Highlights from the game. We saw a lot of value from Ayara, however, she probably was just drawing into too many swamps and not enough spells that actually did stuff for her. Revenge of Ravens was great in that it kept gaining her life, even though it wasn't really preventing her opponents from attacking her. She did stay in the game longer for having this card out. It was also cool to see Reassembling Skeleton go off a few times, just continue bringing it back from the graveyard to be sacrificed again. Torbran got in a lot of extra damage off his own trigger. Sin Prodder got in a surprising amount of damage off of reveals off the top of the deck, and you could see where he was trying to go with the Lightning Rig crew, getting a couple activations and dealing 3 damage each time while Torbran was out, which was cool, but just wasn't able to stay in the game long enough. And then Sir Alan didn't really get off his feet, probably had too many lockdown effects and didn't draw enough proactive stuff, but you could see how he was trying to lock down his opponents with Citadel Siege and Feat of Resistance to give himself openings, just didn't get out enough creatures to deal a lot of damage. Yorvo had a great game in that he got out Sandworm Convergence and had it almost till the end, getting a new worm every time, which triggered Yorvo, also triggered the Elemental Bond, drawing a bunch of cards. And then Trollbred Guardian was cool, gave him trample, which was what he needed to be able to get in for the final blow. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you should like the video. You can subscribe by hitting the icon in the top left. YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the top right. Otherwise, you can check out one of the playlists on the bottom. Have a great day.